for these problems, we're going to go ahead and actually graph this line. So to do this, we're going to find the slope and y-intercept for each graph, and then we're going to go ahead and graph it. So first I need to do like what we did in the last video and actually find what my slope and y-intercept is. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this. Notice that we use f of x this time here. That's okay. It still means the same thing. Still the same thing as y. So now I'm going to see what my slope and y-intercept is. So I see that 2 and m, those are in the same position. And so I see that my slope is going to be 2. And then I see that -1 and b are in the same position. And remember, I have to leave that minus sign with the 1, because that's telling me that my 1 is negative. And so now I'm actually going to go ahead and graph it. So when I graph this, I'm always going to start with where my y-intercept is. That is going to be my starting point. So I'm going to begin with b. Begin with b. And so I see that my y-intercept's at -1. And so I want to go to the y-axis. And I'm going to go down to -1. And I'm going to draw my point right there. And so this is my y-intercept. Now that I have my point, I'm going to use my slope to move from there. So you kind of think of this m stands for move. And so if you remember, my slope is my rise over run. Well, 2, I don't have a fraction on there. But if you remember, any whole number, you can kind of think of it as imaginary 1 being there. And so this is telling me that I'm going to go up 2 and to the right 1. Because remember, it's my rise over my run. So I go up 2 to the right 1. And I like to go ahead and do this for the entire graph, just so it can guide my line. And then I can also go the very opposite direction. So I can change these around. So instead of going up, I can go down. Instead of the right, I can go to the left. So starting at my y-intercept again, I can go down 2 and to the left 1. Then I draw my line. And that's the reason why we can go the opposite direction like that, is because 2 over 1 is really the same thing as -2 over -1. Because 2 negatives make a positive. Okay, let's go ahead and try another one. So now g of x. So finding my slope, I see that's going to be -2/3, and my b is going to be 4. And so remember, I want to begin with b. So my b is at 4, so I'm going to go to my y-axis and go up to 4. And then from here, I'm going to move with my slope. So my slope here is -2/3, so that means I'm going to go down 2 and to the right 3. So down 2 to the right 3. And I'm going down instead of up because my 2 is negative. And so I see with my negative slope, I am going downhill. With my positive slope, I'm going uphill. So that's another way you can check to make sure you're moving the right way with your slope. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and try this next one. And remember, when there's not a number here, there's really a -1 right there. Okay, so this is what your graph should have looked like. Here, my slope was -1, my y-intercept was 4, and so to graph this, I began at 4, began at my b, and then since my slope was -1, that's really the same thing as -1 over 1, so that means I went down 1 and to the right 1. And then again, I can always go the very opposite direction as well, so I could also go up 1 and to the left 1. And that's because -1 over 1 is really the same thing as 1 over -1. If you simplify both of those, you still get -1. And we could also find the x-intercept here. I think on your homework it's going to have you do that. And remember, the x-intercept is just where it crosses the x-axis. So the x-intercept here would be 4. For the one up here, where does it cross the x-axis? Well, it crosses at 6. So x-intercept here would be 6. Or if I was writing that as a point, it'd be 6, 0. Okay, now this next one's a little bit different. And so if I write out my mx plus b, I see my m matches up with this -4/3, but my b doesn't match up with anything. There's nothing there. Whenever that happens, you can kind of think of as a +0 being there. So there's nothing there, you're really just adding 0. So that means that my y-intercept is at 0, and my slope is at -4/3. And so here, my starting point is actually just going to be at 0. And since my slope is -4/3, I'm going to go down 4 and to the right 3. And then I can also go the opposite direction by going up 4 and to the left 3. And then connect it with a line. And here I see that my x-intercept is actually at 0 as well. Okay, that's it for this video. Go ahead and move on to the next one, where we will be solving these first before we graph.